Not too long ago, there was a beautiful village in an emerald forest. The trees bent sideways, stretching their arms toward the people to give them shelter. Even the grasses humbled themselves to make soft beds. And the people rejoiced to repay their forest, listening closely as she whispered through the leaves in songs of wind and rain. There was always a song in the village, blessing the people with wisdom. Life and death were woven together in the village, an eternal green wreath, a cycle of renewal that followed the seasons. That was true until the day when everything changed. The day the merchant arrived.
I remember trying to plant a seed. I forget what tree it was. The moment the pod fell down, as soon as it made contact with the ground, it popped. Because that's what it does. So, how does it know that? How does it remember that? That when this kind of impact happens, I need to come out and go into the ground and wait for the right environment and then grow. Boom.
So seed's really important because if you have seed and you control your seed, you are in control over the rest of your production process. And it's become such a huge site of struggle because corporations have seen an opportunity to take that seed and manipulate it and own it, and in that way determine how food production happens in the world.
Right now, there is a war being waged against African farmers. Africa is touted as the last frontier in the global economy for its natural resources and untapped markets, and this has brought new actors into African agriculture. Powerful multinational companies that run the global seed industry are trying to take away farmers' seed sovereignty. International investors are being invited to exploit these resources in the name of development. But really, it's just opening the doors for corporations to set up shop here, to be able to take Africa's resources and also to change our laws in the interest of business. Farmers are fighting for their lives. They're fighting to hold on to their seed, to be able to pass down that seed to their children. These are the people who feed the majority of the population.
Online publicity to Bola, Sigul, Masala, Yolo, Satemane Yolo, Emana Yolo, Yoduanyamo. Tatela Punke Kumalamo. Emana, Nakuyo, Mokman, and Yoyan. Gomuja, go with your hand, Dingo, Mucha, Muhankaka, and Tatelaku, Muteba, Muja body with, Dingo, Koya.
The current system of farming in many African countries is small-scale farmers. They supply 70 to 80% of the food consumed in African countries. This is actually a system that is working, and it's these farmers that also supply mainly local markets with indigenous food. With tubers, with many different kinds of potatoes, with cassava and many other traditional crops.
This is a crucial moment in our history, and as Africans, we should be aware of what's happening. This idea of modernizing our agriculture by replacing a functioning system with something that is so extractive is completely illogical. At the center of this massive agricultural restructuring that we're witnessing on the continent is the fight for seed.
Seeds are the beginning of all life. Seed is such a wonderful lens to look through to understand our relationship with the broader world and not see ourselves as separate to nature, but very much an inherent part of it. I love the way that seed is everywhere, but often invisible. And so because we know it so well, it's like we've almost forgotten it.
If we look at civilization, man was a hunter-gatherer for 300,000 years. And it's only in the last 10,000 years that he switched to being a farmer. And the basis of that was collecting superior seed. And we can find that seed in settlements across the world, but particularly where civilizations start, West Africa, parts of Central Africa, and then the Fertile Crescent, which is Iraq today.
Seeds hold the genetics of plants that determine the qualities of the plants we eat and the plants in the field. Seeds adapt organically. They accumulate knowledge about their environment. They're able to respond to changes over time and survive, essentially, because of all this knowledge that sits within them.
Life on Earth is unimaginable without seeds. Seeds contain intelligence. I mean, to think that a grain of amaranth, for example, remembers that it is amaranth, right, from the seed. It knows from the seed that from here I shall grow and become an amaranth again. And when I seed myself, I would produce from one little plant 10,000 seeds. I don't think that we have the ability to understand the genius, the godliness, the wonder that is inside each little seed.
Farmer seed, sometimes called indigenous seed, these are the seeds that we've inherited from our ancestors. They've been nurtured by farmers through the ages. They accumulate knowledge about the environment. In contrast, you have commercial hybrid seeds. These seeds are bred for particular trades and for profit. They cannot adapt to change as quickly because that information is not stored inside them.
The day the merchant arrived, he was carrying a heavy weight on his back. You must master the forest. You must gain the upper hand, he cried. As he spoke, beautiful gems spilt out onto the fertile earth. Lifeless stones in thousands of colors glistening in the sun.
The Io per si trova, non si trova, come mon grand-père qui t'offre rien, bah les t'offre rien, bon rien, man, moi c'est un trop vicieux. Donc il va y avoir de bons résultats, donc il va bien faire. Kayam Abel Sambou, chef de village. Musim kumai sana, moi je me dis, moi je bosse, non, je sais pas ça, mais quand même. Banyak kasus di kanali, ini yang lumba, jadi lumba, itu jadi lumba, di kan di farm itu, apa jadi macam, lungai, eset, lungai kan ada mah, ni ada kan, lungai kan lungai, baru kayak sulu sore, pada ni kiri rumah kita lama, lungai ini. Juga saya juga nak saya mau disuli semua saya lokal sama aja. Saya kiri. Maksudnya aku mau ingat jika ibu punya beli apa, jangan so kira dia punya saya.
The seeds, the crops, and the food we have today is the product of millennia from selection processes and nurturing and caring processes of farmers. They were looking at what they were getting, and they kept what they liked and what they needed. I keep seed from you because you seem to be very healthy, you seem to not be very, susceptible to diseases or certain pests. Or they understand you can withstand flood, you can withstand drought. They don't know what's coming up next year, so they keep them both, so they will have something to eat, regardless. They look at the entire organism and its performance in their environment, and then they keep the seeds in hoping that what will grow out of those seeds will be pretty much reflecting that again. It's never identical, thank God. That's the powerful generator that allows us to adapt to changing environments, because environments don't stay stable, they change.
The agriculture system that we know really came about quite recently. So people were farming or producing food actually in a multitude of ways. But in the 1950s, a person called Norman Borlaug started looking at wheat varieties and saying that they could breed the seed in a different way to make it more productive. I guess he actually had good intentions, because he saw that there were a lot of hungry people and he wanted to find a way to increase food production in the world. And that was his way of doing it, creating a wheat variety that was more high yielding. But that then started something called the Green Revolution, and the Green Revolution became an amazing opportunity for a whole lot of companies that were developing to find ways to sell products that they had.
The Green Revolution package always consists of seed, hybrid seed, not farm seed. And these hybrid seed, they usually only grow nicely, so to say, in combination with oftentimes highly hazardous pesticides and also with artificial fertilizer.
There are three main sort of crops. Okay, the first kind is a self-pollinating plant. Then another kind of crop is a potato or a sweet potato, where we grow it from the tuber or the root. So in both of those cases, it's quite hard to make hybrids. But in the case of something like maize, which is an outcrossing or open pollinating crop, where the pollen comes from one parent and it lands on the female, and then the seed is made there. What we can do is we can take clans of maize, so an A clan and a B clan, and we self-pollinate amongst that clan. And then when we cross them, every chromosome has got either A or B. When we do that, we get what's called hybrid vigor, and that gives us a 30% yield increase.
You must remember that hybridization is a natural process. Nature hybridizes where breeding lines from different seed varieties are mixed. Small-scale farmers have been experimenting for 10,000 years in Mexico with maize, 12,000 years with wheat in the Fertile Crescent, 12,000 years for rice in China, and all over the world, small-scale farmers have domesticated seed, and they experimented, so they crossed the lines to produce a more enhanced variety, to maybe give more nutritional content to the seed, will be insect resistant, or will combat certain diseases and pests. It's as old as agriculture itself. When they produce seeds commercially, it's for large-scale commercial monocrop production.
When you know that you're looking at a hybrid maize field is when all maize plants look the same. They're all the same height, they have the same, kind of phenotypic look, then you know that's a hybrid field.
If you've got 10,000 hectares of maize, you want it all to germinate on the same day, you want it to grow at the same speed, and you want to be able to harvest on the same day. You can't have things happening higgledy-piggledy. The planting is done by mechanical planting. Fertilizers will go down at planting. Maybe you'd use an aeroplane to spray fungicides because an aeroplane can cover hectares at a time. Every plant is exactly the same, so that it ripens exactly at the same time, exactly at the same size, and the combines just go through and efficiently harvest the maize. That's the real massive advantage that you have. That's why hybrid maize is taken off all over the world.
One of my fields I've been researching in for 25 plus years now was the ecological fallouts, risks, safety issues with what we call genetically modified seeds or genetic engineering. And the fundamental premise of genetic engineering is that DNA, which they alter, is code. Pretty much like an IT code. And those parallels, those comparisons to the IT sector are not mine. They use that language of coding, cutting, pasting, editing, in order to convey the message that they could master this and they could reprogram it, And that's, of course, not true.
We run all John Deere tractors and forage harvesters. They have the latest technology in them. They have yield mapping. They have technology that allows John Deere to monitor the machines remotely, and then they will phone me and tell me if it needs a service or if there's a problem with the machine. They have satellite receivers mounted on the roofs. You can plot your line and you basically push a button that's got a steering wheel on it and it'll drive itself. I was fortunate enough to go to Germany with John Deere, and they showed us around all their facilities and all their factories. They were just saying that in the last 3 years, Bill Gates and Warren Buffett are their largest shareholders, and obviously they've realized that technology is the basis of their tractors and their equipment now, and it's all technology driven.
When you drive through the countryside, you see these fields of one crop only. Many people will say, oh my God, it's so beautiful, because they see green. We see monocrops. This is anti-nature. We as human beings, we are rich because of our diversity. The more we exchange ideas with each other, even intergenerationally, the stronger and richer we are. That's the same thing with nature. Producing diverse crops in a field attracts the pollinators that are so essential for food production. It doesn't contaminate our soil systems and our water systems. We're not protectionists. We believe that we need to live in harmony with nature. We can't do battle against nature. These companies are in a war against nature.
In Europe, we redesigned the entire landscape completely. Make it fit for that understanding, for that kind of agriculture. And chemistry should replace functions that we were knocking out by just growing a monoculture of a fairly uniform crop. If you grow a uniform crop, you're inviting unwanted guests. Microbes, insects, whatever. And since you're offering that really at a huge scale, there are coming in at a fairly large scale. Then you have to, keep them in check because you knocked out the diversity that was keeping them in check. And you did this with chemicals. Then these insects and these microbes, if there's one thing they can do is adapt to the changing environment. They're masters of survival. So they adapt to everything, to the worst chemicals you can possibly think. They adapted to all of them. Now you have to come with more powerful chemicals, sprayed more frequently, in higher doses, different ones in mixes. And here we are, stuck at the dead end of this, where resistance is rampant everywhere. We can see the end of it is in sight, and our environment is destroyed.
The natural world that we see around us is built on all these small systems that all work together and that connect one to the other to make bigger systems. And the more diversity you have, the stronger those systems often are, because if one small part fails for whatever reason, there's not rain at one particular time, or it's a bit hot or whatever, there might be something else in that system that can step into that role. But as soon as we start cutting down diversity, we cut down those opportunities for the connections and for systems that support each other and link together.
It is very obvious that this Green Revolution model of farming is not sustainable at all. And there are alternatives. For instance, the concept of agroecology is an alternative. Especially in African countries, the system that exists already is functioning.
Wakati wangu wa furaha kukulia shambani ni wakati ambapo tumeshalima, tumevuna, baba anatuchukua, tunaenda mjini kufanya shopping, tunanunua nguo. Alafu chakula wakati huo tulikuwa unapikwa wali na samaki. Samaki mkubwa, watoto wanafurahi, wanacheka. Nimelima zaidi ya miaka 40 au 45. Kwa kweli kwa kulima ninalima kiasi kikubwa. Nalima kama approximately 3 acres. Japo nafanya shughuli zingine za kufundisha wajasiriamali wengine Arusha, wapi Dodoma, wapi nachukuliwa na mashirika naenda kufundisha. Lakini wakati wa kilimo ninalima, alafu tuna favor. Nimependa kujishughulisha na kilimo hicho kwa sababu nimeolewa kwenye familia ambayo mama mkwe wangu amekufa akiwa na miaka 115. Kwa sababu nilikuta mama mkwe wangu anatumia vyakula vya asili, ndio sababu akaishi muda mrefu. Nimejishughulisha pia sana kwa sababu baba yangu alikuwa mkulima wa kahawa na alikuwa anapiga sumu za viwandani na bila kutumia vifaa vinavyotakiwa, na alikufa kwa ugonjwa wa kansa akiwa na miaka 52. Mbegu zote nilizootesha hapa ni mbegu ambazo tunazalisha wenyewe sisi wakulima. Ni za asili, tumezikuta kuanzia vizazi, wazazi wetu walikuwa wanalima. Na sisi tumeendelea kuzihifadhi. Na zao langu kubwa ambalo la utafiti nafanyia kazi sasa hivi ni mushroom. Nalima mushroom kwa wingi, pia nazalisha mbegu ya mushroom na nasafirisha ndani na nje ya nchi. Kwa sababu kama mushroom nimezalisha mbegu na nimefundisha peleka Rwanda, Uganda na Burundi kupitia umoja wa vikundi vya wakulima Tanzania. Lakini government hawahangaiki. Kwa mambo haya ya hichi kilimo cha kisasa sawa na madawa, government huwa inatoaga kama vile unapata, walikuwa wanasema ni voucher. Unapewa voucher, unawezeshwa labda kwa bei nafuu mbegu wakati wa kilimo na mbolea, lakini sio hivi vya asili.
Governments spend billions, honestly, on subsidizing seed and inputs to farmers. And so if one had to put all that money into supporting a different system, one could have so much progress, but that doesn't happen. And then you get the commercial sector saying, oh, agroecology doesn't work, or, it's not comparing the same effort and money going into the one system as the other. What we really need to be doing is transforming these large-scale systems towards agroecology.
The idea of collecting your own seeds is important because they work with the indigenous microbes in our soils. I mean, the life that happens underneath in the soil is incredible. There's a whole universe under there that we are only now beginning to understand.
Kuna ugonjwa ambao hakuna dawa kabisa hata za kisasa. Hata dawa za madukani hakuna, hizi za kuponyesha mnyauko. Mmea ukishapata ule mnyauko, hakuna dawa. Kwa hiyo mimi nimeweza kutengeneza dawa ya kuponyesha mnyauko na mimea yangu inaendelea vizuri. Faida ya kutumia mbolea za viwandani kwenye udongo, kwanza kuna vile viinilishe ambavyo kuna virutubisho vile vya asili kama wadudu wanaotengeneza zile mbolea. Tunawatunza tusipotumia mbolea za viwandani, kwa sababu vile zile mbolea za viwandani zinaua wale wadudu.
You do everything correctly, which your consultants tell you to do, and you spend a lot of money on putting fertilizer in the ground, but what we're starting to see is that the plant can't access the nutrients in the soil. It's only using what you're feeding it. The plant becomes lazy, and when it's fed food, it stops looking for food. We thought that we need to put more fertilizer in the ground to get more yields, but all you're doing is literally destroying your soil at the expense of trying to get a crop. 50 years ago, we used a third less fertilizer to get a ton of grain, and that's just because the soil has now just been so denuded that it can't actually produce anymore. So you're literally force-feeding it, if you could call it that, to try and get it to function.
We talk about the seeds, the different varieties of the seeds. What we have always noticed with the hybrid seeds is like a spoiled babies, because they have been bred for that. Like, your food will be there, don't have to worry very much. Weed will be removed by the herbicide, by the weed killer, so you have no struggle. Pests will be all killed and removed completely. So you are nice, baby, protected. So just do your job, suck what you are given, and produce a crop. Then we are complaining that our food lacks nutrition, and then we have to do supplement. That's another line of the business.
If we look at the way that industrial agriculture thinks about soil health, where it is something abstract and we put in the fertilizer and we spray the different chemicals, it becomes a very dangerous thing, because after time, even a short time, you've completely depleted the soil to the point that those soils are toxic.
The insects also become resistant to a lot of the chemicals. And we're seeing with the herbicides that it's also like that, because now there's too much of the same herbicide used, that then those normal weeds are becoming super weeds that don't respond to herbicide. And you've got to use more and more stronger herbicides to control them.
The use of chemical fertilizer is also masking problems that we have in the soil. I kept putting more and more fertilizer down, spraying all the correct sprays and doing everything that I was told to do, and I kept getting the same yield. And it just made me start to question the whole thing. You go and dig in a field and you won't find any earthworms, and the earthworms are an indicator of the soil health. The nutrient density that is in the food that we're producing now is significantly lower than what it used to be I remember my dad telling me that when he used to go into the fruit shop, you could smell the tomatoes. And I don't know if you go into a shop now, you will not, there's no smell to a tomato now. It's got no taste, it doesn't have that sweetness anymore. Everything is grown, all the varieties are engineered to have shelf life. And all the big chain stores, that's all they want is shelf life. And if you go and buy a packet of lettuce that's in a bag, that has been pumped full of preservatives. Healthy food should rot. If you pick the flower, it doesn't last 2 weeks. It only lasts a few days and then it dies. It's a vicious circle. The farmers will put pressure on to produce the right type of food that the shops want to buy. You're sort of compelled to go down that path that they tell you.
From your local supermarket, but sometimes those apples come from Spain, they come from Egypt. You're not aware of the miles or the kilometers that the food that you're eating had to travel, how long it's been refrigerated. In fact, just yesterday I discovered that these apples actually have a fridge life of 2 years.
The supermarket has become our kitchen. The supermarket system is more important than our schooling system. Schools have been shut for over, 2 years now under COVID, but you can't keep the supermarket system shut because people will starve. A recent invention, by the way, the supermarket. It's a really recent invention. A few decades ago, we didn't have this, but people were eating. This idea that we are dependent on 5 supermarket chains in this country that produce the vast majority of our food is criminal. I mean, we know about collusion in the prices of food, that they work together to raise the price of particular products. We have no control over it. It's their food. Who are we to tell them what the cost of bread ought to be?
Well, if you're living in the city and you go to the supermarket to buy your food, there's a package of food that's available to you. You might look at a cabbage and see it's beautiful and it doesn't have any holes in it, and you buy it and you avoid the lettuce next door which has got holes in it. You might actually be better off with the lettuce with holes in it because that didn't have as much insecticide as the cabbage that hasn't got any holes in it. But it's a trade-off. You really don't know what is in it.
Anyila nale, njamale, jam, pene yiso. Mata emana ye kajoyo ma, ye kajoyo ma, ye kajoyo ma. Loli babe, mulom emana ye hangi moy. Inje di bulonga bumbum depuis no disiku boli nanji buki inji commencé e wañ. Jaay fana lo bi mata sigul anale sigul sosomo sata anale non injitata e baytu sigul yo mo kama itay yo bake bare ololi hane o baytu teñ mais sigul letum su teñ so sikanko wo woma bi ololi o baytu no ma jeti wa non do kandi hale bare sigul su letu so mo nga hay so jak bodi bitam liye jetata sigul kanka wo nyiye nyi wajake itu eji mu gitu ketuk sojak panu kan sojak préparer sojak nu conserver sojak wa ayen sojak ololi simita on se kata gouvernement na ko ngol sigul bare babe mayat ko ngale mu sigul so ololi babe sigul on suji men tin ji ngale so parce que sigul so loli di suma lesano kangale so mo ko kandi tabu e mana en ko redit bandu juke wuli babe tamay jolo e baje mana no hase yo tamay sohlay ngame mano yake no astu kanto lete jak e je sigula solo li so jase
From the seed is where we get our food. And if we control the seed, we control the food. And if you control the food, you control the people. If I have to sell you my seeds, then you are almost like you have no way else. Then you have to come to me, and then I can sell you whatever I want. If we cannot plant our seeds, and we have to buy the seeds what they want us to plant, then they control the type of the plant that we plant, and the produce that comes out of that, and then our livelihood. We are prisons.
Agriculture changed largely after World War II, but it was initiated and encouraged and made possible, if you wish, by a lot of technological or chemical interventions and discoveries made during the wars in the military field. In the search of chemical weapons, how you can knock out your enemy, they found all kinds of nasty substances that once the war was over, you know, and you couldn't kill people with it anymore, they were looking for good uses, and it still killed insects. So there's some nasty and very dark history in some of our insecticides being used in the Holocaust. Same thing with fertilizers. They were discovered in a search for a cheap source of nitrogen to create dynamite for bombs, for blowing up your enemies. So most of this stuff has a pretty dark, what we call dual-use history. With it came a certain mindset, you know? I mean, these things don't fall from the sky and pop from the trees or something. They do evolve in a certain phase of society where we're in. And, you know, we were really effective in creating weapons of mass destruction in the last 150 years. So, and these tools were fundamental to it, you know?
There is this Alliance for Green Revolution in Africa. ACRA was founded 2006 with actually a great objective. They promised that they would double the incomes and also the yields of 35 million small-scale food producer households, which is actually more or less the entire small-scale food producer population in Africa. And they also promised at the same time that they would halve poverty and hunger in 20 African countries. They introduced the entire Green Revolution package on African small-scale food producer. They had more than $1 billion of funding, which is massive. So they set up a new seed system that kicks the farmers actually out of the system. Their promise was to achieve all of these objectives by the year 2020. And we found out that instead of halving poverty and hunger in 13 African countries where AGRA is actually focusing on its work, hunger increased by 30%. Whatever they had promised, and also with a lot of support from many international organizations, it was a complete failure.
These are not seed companies. When you're talking about Monsanto and Bayer, who merged, ChemChina, and you're talking about Corteva. These are the three main companies. They are not seed companies. Who are they? They are agrochemical companies. These are pesticide companies. This package, we call it a green revolution package. There's nothing revolutionary about it. That's the first thing. When you make a new plant variety artificially, you must remember that corporate seed is made in a laboratory. We always say it's made by white men in white coats in white labs. Not experimented in the field. It doesn't include farmers. It's a sterile enterprise where the seed is bred for a certain purpose. The motive behind seed breeding is for corporate interests, not consumers. We just given products on the market and we have to buy it.
We receive a number of funds from outside the country. Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, Feed the Future. Most of the funding, especially from these companies, are for hybrids. Funding the open pollinated varieties, to them, is not a business. Because what you are telling farmers, like, you have option to recycle for more than 3 generations, which means more than 3 years, there is no business. Eh?
The government provides a subsidy towards the costs of the seed, the commercial seed, the pesticides, and the inorganic fertilizer. Because if you buy it on the open market as a commercial farmer, it will cost a fortune. So the government puts the money on the table. But whose money is it? It comes from the public purse. Our money goes towards subsidizing the purchase of industrial seed and war chemicals. At least between 54 and 70 toxic chemicals are being dumped on Africa. That's banned in the European Union and exported from the European Union to us. Sacrifice zones. How can we not be a sacrifice zone? It's not good enough for Europe, but we're being poisoned by an industrial food system that we never asked for. Nobody consulted us. What have these governments done for us since the end of colonialism? Can they show us that they provided every single African with at least access to clean water and sanitation? Why do we have malaria on the continent and it's wiped out in other parts of the world? So the failure is on the part of the state, the African state. Looters, we call them. State looters, because they have siphoned off public resources for the past 50, 60 years, ably assisted by their partners in the North. Why is the North doing business with despots?
Politique, donc, comme un des chefs arrondissement plus chef de village. Pour tous les chefs de la force paix, c'est tout, c'est mentionné, c'est noté. Tant il y a tant de chefs de village, quoi, c'est village et oui, moi, on m'a fait pour la arrondissement. Arrondissement, c'est un des Oussou, c'est un des Loujaolo, avec combien de chefs de village, avec tant de chefs de village. Donc, pour nous, on m'a fait un arrondissement, qui vit dans la communauté. Communauté, pour communauté, c'est commune. Donc, tout ça, fait, on lui dit que l'État pour le
On an annual basis, the government here, for the last 5 years, comes and assists small-scale farmers. And by the way, nobody comes here to do like a survey or anything like that to say, what are your needs? So there's just an announcement that on such and such a day, the tractors are going to be coming to help you plow the fields, and you are going to get seeds, a particular bean. If you get this bean, it comes with this other entourage of stuff, from your seed to your plate, basically, this is controlled by this one thing that the government has provided. So you get locked in.
We can see through the multi-pronged strategy that these companies are coming into the continent with that actually undermines what people have been building for centuries, for generations in their communities and in their families. This extractive model takes away from the people.
Kanka kuli yake parce que si ululi baba hinkiri baye akiano ase akila hutim sankung sigula sankung lumiara janga so makani bi tabola minyana ku kam ku ban afulenut nona jola kane mo afulenut wananda afulen bo sigul sa tayenke jaaw dans le borane a buna ko ngulu donc déjà commencé kanka kuli parce que ku ban ku ma bañe let ku na hana katino déjà bañe la bu banto minye ku commencé mo ku ne sigulonsu jom bodi tang yake ata ende yake generation yake let kuna ku fulen sigula sola fan ku fan ku ne sata umma sata mansa le sano sola nye hinkina ku jom ku nguso ku bet so ku ban hani ka kon kuito kano san kuito nye amera uta sanke ku se ko no jake parce que olola la jola le plen sigul le tu ko mana ka sen sigul.
These crystals, the merchant exclaimed, they are what you need. With them, you can have power over the forest. Slowly the villagers approached, drawn to the colorful crystals, which seemed to emit their own strange and intoxicating song. And the crystalline song grew, sending wave upon wave of chemical energy through the villages, through their rivers and their roots.
The Agra model of farming focuses only on a very limited amount of crops, or actually only maybe one or two. The main Agra crop is maize. We have a massive diversity in many African countries. And then all of a sudden what we create with Agra is just a desert of monocultures, maize. And that's neither supporting such city environment and supporting biodiversity, nor is it making sure that we can consume and enjoy and eat a diverse and healthy diet.
More than 51% of the calories that we consume globally come from rice, maize, and wheat.
The aim is not to save the people, because the aim is to get money. Because they are talking about saving the people, but of course, how can the companies run without having money? So you can see that the concentration is on maize. We used to have indigenous crops, indigenous cereal crops like the finger millets, like the sorghum, like the pear millet. But due to the introduction of maize, we have realized that people now, they are tending to growing more maize than growing those traditional crops, even in areas where maize does its sweet.
So it's a big lie, basically, to make you think that this is food, that is not food. This is a weed, this is a plant, right? You need to consume this, this is poisonous, this is bad, this is dangerous. You have no reason to go to bed hungry. Why? Because nature produces in abundance, that is food. Food is not the thing that you buy in the supermarket. That's something else. It's been over-processed, it has no nutrients, etc. The stuff that is nutrient-dense is actually the stuff that just grows wild here. Imbuya, ukatolo, umbilikane, these are indigenous crops that grow here. But you're not going to find this in the supermarket. Have you ever seen imbuya in the supermarket? Maybe once or twice, but it does not feature, it's going to be hidden somewhere in a corner. To me, this is food. It's nutritious, it's dense, it has high minerals, vitamins, etc. All the other stuff, all the other crap that we eat in the supermarket is stuff that is designed to make money for the corporations. the rise in cardiovascular diseases, the rise in diabetes in this country is clearly linked to the crap that we are consuming as human beings. These diseases are modern diseases. They are linked to the changes in agriculture and to the changes in the food system that we currently have. In order to solve our health crisis, food is the answer.
It's clear that the food that we're eating doesn't have the nutritional value for a young child to develop the way they meant to. Maize flour is fortified with vitamin A and with iron because of the high stunting levels. The Department of Health in 2018 actually reported stunting levels almost reaching 30% among young boy children under the age of 5. It's in the bread, it's in the maize, it's in some of the canned food also. It all has to be artificially fortified, in other words, strengthened with these artificial vitamins, because the way the food is being grown, it no longer contains those minerals and essential micronutrients organically.
So today we went to the barn.
Si anaanza kubeba, anakuambia huu mhindi huu mwanangu ni mzuri kwa kuweka kwa ajili ya kuja kuotesha baadaye. Kwa hiyo kama ni kuotesha, tunaotesha, kama migomba kama hii tunaotesha, na migomba kahawa tunaotesha, tunavuna, yaani kila kitu kinachofanyika kwenye shamba, kama ni kuvuna, kusagisha kahawa, kuanika, kuosha, kuanika na kupeleka sokoni. Tulikuwa tunafanya hivi. Mimi nimeona kwamba haya ambayo unayotumia haya ndio ni mazuri. Natoa mfano haya, kuna mmoja analima mboga za mboga. Huwa anatumia madawa. Yaani kila unaharisha. Anapoweka kwenye eneo husika namuona anafunika vizuri, na mimi nikachukua hapo, yani mambo yote niliiga kutoka kwa mama. Anatuambia unaweka hivi mwanangu, ni hivi na hivi, hata ukiolewa kesho kutwa usije ukawa katika hali ambayo ya kwenda kumtegemea mtu au kumtegemea mama mkwe.
The other focus of Agra, which is maybe even more dangerous, is they work on legislation, on frameworks. So they try to implement new frameworks how to govern seeds in African countries, which eventually leads to that even farmer seeds are criminalized.
In 1961, a few European countries with seed companies came together to form the International Union for the Protection of New Plant Varieties.